In this episode of Cycling Tours, I will explore the cycling network within the eastern sector of Bukit Panjang. Hey everybody, Transit Evolution here, and welcome to yet another episode of Cycling Tours, a video series featuring the cycling path and park connector network within a cycling town. For this episode, I'll be looking at one of the newest cycling towns in Singapore, Bukit Panjang. In fact, 8.5 kilometers of the cycling paths here are launched in February 2023. Yes, this year, bringing the cycling network here to 16 kilometers. I will hence begin by pointing out that Bukit Panjang is a new town with 5 neighbourhoods, and works are still ongoing within Neighbourhood 6, Senja, in completing the cycling network there. So I will not be able to cover the entire town in one single video. There will therefore be 2 videos for the eastern and western sectors of Bukit Panjang, and today I will be covering the eastern half, comprising the older neighbourhoods 1, 2, and 4, namely Jelebu, Bangkit, and Fajar. I will begin by riding on the Pang Sua Park Connector right next to Bukit Panjang Road. This park connector starts at the eastern end of this town and then mainly follows the Pang Sua Canal before ending at the northern end of Choa Chu Kang New Town. This is where I approach the Senja Cashew Community Centre, where I encounter a dismount and push sign, a notable inconvenience along this route. Now the CC is built right next to Pang Sua Pond, a stormwater collection pond for the surrounding areas, which eventually supplies water to the Upper Seletar Reservoir, and it is surrounded by a neighbourhood park. But I will not go too far ahead of myself because I will explore more of it later. Park connectors will form the bulk of the cycling network that is traversed today, because the majority of the new cycling paths are in Senja, which is seeing some new housing developments of late. For the eastern side of the town, the cycling infrastructure is mainly in the form of older park connectors, which have existed since the late 2000s within this town. There are 3 main routes that roughly radiate out from Bukit Panjang MRT station at the town centre to the various neighbourhoods in the east and south of Bukit Panjang. The Pang Sua Park Connector which I am on right now will lead to the heart of Bangkit. This will be followed by a cycling path along Petir Road on the southern flank of the town serving Jelebu, and then the Bukit Panjang Park Connector which leads to Sega. This is where I have to cross Bukit Panjang Road, and you may wonder, why the detour? Well, that's because the Pang Sua Canal which the park connector is built along switches to the south side of the road at this intersection. Park connectors are, after all, typically built using underutilized spaces along drainage reserves or MRT railway corridors to connect parks and nature areas. So in this case, the land directly adjacent to the canal is used for such a purpose. While this offers more recreational spaces that can sometimes be great for commutes, almost like a cycling highway at its best, it often results in unideal connections at times, as the park connectors have to work around many other competing land uses and make do with remnant spaces. You can see how the park connector kinda narrows in dimension here to the size of a regular footpath as I approach a bus stop, having to deal with the obstructions made by the pedestrian overhead bridge that was built before it. In fact, there's no signs of this particular path being a park connector, even though it is indicated as such on park connector maps. And then occasionally, you get strange routings like this one over here, where the park connector goes unnecessarily downhill to follow the canal, only to return back uphill as it meets the footpath again at the next intersection. Constant changes in elevation making cycling a lot more exhausting, which is why you see nobody using this path here. This is where I will cross Pending Road and the park connector continues here, as I pass by the neighbourhood centre of Bangkit on the opposite side, featuring amenities like the Bukit Panjang Hawker Centre. You can kind of sense a higher volume of pedestrians here, with many queuing up at the traffic light to get from their homes to amenities in the rather lively Bangkit neighbourhood centre. We also will soon pass a rather busy pair of bus stops in this vicinity, forming a bus hub right next to the Bukit Timah Expressway, which allows people to change between many bus services, providing convenient access to areas across Singapore, like the City, Marine Parade, Woodlands and Yishun. I will now quickly note that it takes about 10 minutes to get here by bike from the MRT station, compared to 5 minutes by bus services 187, 190, 960 and 963, so it's not very good. Also noteworthy are these 1987 21-storey housing blocks on the right, 210 and 211 Petir Road, which were intentionally designed as landmark buildings that identifies the motorists on the BKE that they are approaching Bukit Panjang. Though this is where the park connector ends, as I approach Zhenghua Nature Park, a green buffer for the Central Catchment Nature Reserve. I'll make a U-turn here. I will now travel on the cycling path along Pending Road. One thing about Bukit Panjang that makes it a bit harder to build cycling infrastructure is the presence of these immovable pillars and stations for the light rail transit system here. Unfortunately, that means that every time I encounter a LRT station, such as this one here by the name of Pending, the cycling path abruptly ends and I have to make a detour around the station through footpaths. Though it seems to me that in this case, they shouldn't have given up. Space can still be made for a cycling path by adjusting the road median. As I travel towards the eastern end of the cycling path along Petir Road in preparation for the next leg of the journey, I guess one fun fact about Bukit Panjang is that it was known as Zhenghua New Town when it was first conceptualized. But its name was changed to Bukit Panjang in 1987 because nobody at that time knew what Zhenghua is. Now, at the intersection of Petir Road with Chestnut Avenue, the cycling path ends, and this is where I will start to cycle back to Bukit Panjang town centre. The path ends here at the border between the predominantly public housing neighbourhood of Bangkit and the up-and-coming dairy farm estate, consisting of exclusively private housing. Eventually, some years from now, the cycling network will extend throughout this estate, but not for now. This area sure feels a bit more laid back given all the landed housing on my left. Perhaps I'll take this time to briefly describe what Bukit Panjang looked like prior to its development. The vicinity would consist of rural settlements along Upper Bukit Timah Road, with mainly agricultural and industrial developments like cold storage dairy farm, Nanyang Shoe Factory, Lamsun Canning and Rubber Factory, as well as granite quarries to supply materials for the construction of public housing at that time. The work on the new town began in 1981, with topographical surveys followed by land acquisition and resettlement, and then the start of construction in 1984, with people moving here starting in 1986. Now, this was a period of rapid urbanization in Singapore, giving birth to many new towns dotted across the island. The demand for public housing was intense, so intense that to meet the demand, nearly 190,000 dwelling units were built during the fifth five-year building program between 1981 and 1985. It is during this time that Bukit Panjang New Town was built, and they had to build a lot of housing fast. So they turned to more mechanized methods of construction, requiring greater repetition in the layouts of precincts. You can see the repetitions on the map within the neighbourhood of Petir, especially for all the blocks numbering between 101 Gangsa Road and 129 Pending Road on the right. Great symmetries can be observed throughout these clusters of slab blocks. Such uniformity does not bode well for urban design that has character and charm. Fortunately, this is also around the time when there was an increasing initiative to soften the massive scale of high-rise buildings, as more human-scaled architecture like covered linkways and shelters were tastefully added along the footpaths in these precincts. Speaking of covered linkways, I'm now on a cycling path next to one. This path is amongst the oldest of the cycling paths built in this town, but I find the cycling path here suspiciously wide, and the footpath ridiculously narrow for pedestrians. Nowadays, covered linkways demand a wider footpath width of 2.4 meters to provide a clear width of 1.8 meters for 3 pedestrians to walk comfortably in parallel, given that the pillars of the covered linkway takes up space. But there clearly isn't enough space for 3 human beings engaging in social conversations to walk in tandem here. The drain covers are also not flush to the surface of the cycling path, which makes for awkward bumps if you are riding too far to the left. So I will have to ride closer to the center of the path to avoid jerking my camera and causing it to droop. Closer to the town centre, the path along the covered walkway is a lot better designed, and you can see the contrast with the flawed walkway which I pointed out earlier. The space for cyclists is more humble, and there's more adequate space for pedestrians to walk. Speaking of which, it took 7 minutes to ride 1.5 kilometers along Petir Road to the town centre, compared to the 11 minutes it would have taken on bus service 973. Cycling is clearly the time-competitive mode of travel here. I will now make a turn to Upper Bukit Timah Road, and officially this is where the cycling path ends. But after negotiating a few bollards, we can proceed to pedal through the town square, right at the heart of Bukit Panjang town centre. This open plaza is built on top of a huge canal, providing a lively space for the residents of this town to gather, and has many transportation connections, through the bus interchange within Hillion Mall, or the MRT and LRT station adjacent to it. A big and direct pedestrian link also allows the riding of bikes right through the plaza, to the intersection under Bukit Panjang flyover. This flyover was opened in 2015, supposedly to ease traffic loads along Upper Bukit Timah Road, a semi-expressway in the vicinity. As you can imagine, the enlarged intersection sure makes crossing it a bigger chore for the many pedestrians and cyclists here. Kindly enjoy the noise and air pollution as we wait unpleasantly for the very long signal cycle to turn in our favour. As I now turn back to Pang Sua Park Connector, let's now talk about the town's physical structure and how it was thoughtfully designed by the planners of the Public Housing Board in the 1980s. Bukit Panjang Road is the boulevard which runs along an east-west axis within the town's valley, with a ring road connecting the arterial to the various neighbourhoods within the town. At the heart of it lies Pang Sua Pond, which collects rainwater runoff from surrounding areas before it is pumped to Upper Seletar Reservoir. It's on my left. A boardwalk was constructed here on top of the pond in 2017, providing scenic views of the town's skyline amidst its rolling terrain. This is where I have to briefly dismount and push to cross this steep little bridge. Afterwards, I will have to paddle hard through Bukit Panjang Park to reach higher grounds. There will be a recurring theme within the northern sector of the town, where thought is given to retain its natural terrain. With Bukit Panjang meaning long hill in Malay, you can expect some hills along the way. This is where I approach Subzone Road and have to cross this traffic light to travel along a canal that serves as a boundary between Subzone and Fajar neighbourhoods. It also doubles as a Bukit Panjang Park connector, which provides a green link for pedestrians and cyclists to the town centre. This is especially so since the only way to get here using the road network would be to make a detour through either end of the ring road. Cycling is hence the most time-efficient way to get here from the town centre, if you are living in say Pangshan View on my left. As you can see, this part of the link is done well. It helps to make Bukit Panjang more walkable by making it more useful, safe, comfortable and interesting. Useful by providing good links to other parts of the town. Safe, being segregated from vehicles. Comfortable, with the trees providing shade and a lack of air and noise pollution from vehicles. And interesting, given the thoughtfully designed streetscape and skyline in the vicinity that pleases the eye. The only unfortunate thing that weakens this pedestrian and cyclist linkage is the way it meets Bukit Panjang Ring Road near Sega LRT station. For whatever reason, there's no direct wheelchair accessible and hence bikeable crossing to continue on the canal towards Sega Road. Hence, I will have to make this inconvenient detour to the nearest signalized crossing about 60 meters away, next to the other end of Sega LRT station. And since the cycling path network here gives up every single time it meets an LRT station, I will have to mix with quite a bit of pedestrians for a short distance, as I pass the precinct center of Sega Grove. Back to the park connector. This one is a very short stretch which will lead to a signalized crossing along Sega Road. I'm sure most commuter cyclists will probably turn out into Sega Road here to get to their homes in Sega Grove and Sega Gardens, rather than continue on the park connector which leads practically to nowhere. But Sega Road does not feature any cycling paths, so I will traverse along the park connector parallel to the Kranji Expressway until I reach the dead end. In the meantime, I guess it's good to note that it took 11 minutes to get here from the MRT station, fairly competitive compared to the 12 minutes it would take on the LRT or bus services 922 and 976. Do take note though that when I cite such journey times, they are done with the assumption that you are riding on a good quality shared bike, typically at a speed of 15 km per hour, so your mileage may vary depending on your riding characteristics. This park connector starts to have a more leisure-oriented characteristic from here on, as it connects to Zhenghua Nature Park, the same one I mentioned earlier along Bukit Panjang Road, as part of the Western Adventure Loop completed by the NParks in 2009. It leads to the Chestnut and Dairy Farm Nature Parks, popular spots for hiking or mountain biking. Being hilly and not well connected to the rest of the town, these tracks will not be practical for commuting on a shared bike, so they will not be covered in this video, and I will look back to the street network right here. Finally, I will start riding on the new cycling paths that were completed this year. This one along Bukit Panjang Ring Road is just one of the many segments within the eastern half of the town, connecting to Zhenghua Community Centre and Bukit Panjang Neighbourhood Police Centre. Interestingly though, the path does not continue along the ring road. Instead, the only continuing road segment with a cycling path is along the western side of Fajar Road. This is a little unfortunate, as it means that educational institutions along that stretch, like Beacon Primary School, will not see cycling infrastructure. Along the rather humbly sized Fajar Road though, space has been found to build a cycling path that serves many housing developments right through the Fajar neighbourhood. This includes the neighbourhood centre, Fajar Shopping Centre, though it is on the opposite side of the street, next to the LRT station. Now, Bukit Panjang is one of those few towns where the street and neighbourhood names are rather meaningful, being not numbered. So I'm travelling in the neighbourhood of Fajar, which means dawn in Malay, suggesting good views of sunrise for those living here. Indeed, some of the blocks here provide picturesque views of the Central Catchment Nature Reserve in the east, where the environment is preserved. On top of that, the natural topography of this area is also preserved, which makes this neighbourhood very hilly. While adding character to the vicinity, this unfortunately results in reliability issues for the LRT system that was shoehorned into the then already built-up town, requiring plenty of twists and turns in this area, once even described like a roller coaster. The undulating terrain also makes cycling a lot more exhausting along this stretch opposite of the Fajar Hills precinct. You can't see it very well here, but I was struggling to cycle uphill along this stretch of Fajar Road, where it diverges from the LRT system, which itself travels at grade over a pretty substantial hill. The street is so high up that Zhenghua Primary School on my right seems to be built on the basement level. As I approach Bukit Panjang Ring Road though, and enter the neighbourhood of Bangkit, which means rise in Malay, I have to be even more careful to hold on to my brakes as I travel downhill, to avoid speeding beyond 25 km per hour, and to give way to vehicles. Yes, the slope is so steep that you can exceed the speed limit on a shared bike. Let's just say that riding uphill here would be an even more daunting task, so I would recommend residents use this path only for southbound journeys, such as to the Bangkit neighbourhood centre across the road, where you can eat at the Bukit Panjang Hawker Centre. At this point, I'm approaching Bukit Panjang Road, and this is where I finished covering the last path segment for this video, featuring the eastern sector of the town. Overall, I would say that the main weakness of the cycling network here would lie with its rugged terrain, though you could consider that a plus if you are looking to keep fit and train your strength through cycling amid your commutes. Alternatively, you could adopt electric bikes or motorized personal mobility devices, though you probably will spend more time dismounting and pushing as the cycling paths are limited to one side of the road. Still, there are many strengths to this town. Being a smaller town with a great urban form that has more human-skilled streets that are not overrun with cars, I'm sure many will find it liberating and enjoyable to move across the town by cycling here, rather than to always be stuck in tiny metal boxes, be it the inefficient car, the windy feeder bus services, or the overcrowded LRT. Now, you have the choice. As I come to the end of this episode of Cycling Tours, do feel free to let us know your thoughts regarding this town's cycling network. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified of new videos, and consider supporting me using the Super Thank function of YouTube. With that, this is Transit Evolution, signing off.